We've been working on this plan and the ground's been shifting beneath our feet for quite a while now.
There's lots of changes occurred, and so that's been challenging.
A school year like no other, just weeks away. What exactly students and staff will return to is still in flux. We've got the latest tonight. The race is officially on for Windsor's Ward 7 council seats. An election date finally set, and candidates say they're relieved and ready. Live look outside, a little cloudy today, but we're still getting hit with the humidity. Feels like 35 outside right now. Nick Cerkovich with the full forecast tonight. I'm Chris Hensing. Thanks for joining us. The Canadian-U.S. border will stay closed for at least another month. The government has announced that will be until September 21st. It's been closed since the start of the pandemic. It has taken a toll on families and partners separated by the border. That includes a Windsor, Michigan couple expecting their first child together. We first brought you their story a couple months ago. The CBC's Tamina Aziz tonight tells us how they're doing.
This is emotionally tough on both of us, and her being pregnant, high-risk pregnancy.
Ashley and Tom Cook are preparing to welcome their first baby in less than a week. Both doctors. She works in Windsor, he works in Michigan. They were apart for months until June when closure rules were updated to allow immediate family members to reunite. But now, days away from the birth of their child, Tom may not be able to be present as he's still completing his 14-day quarantine requirement.
I feel like we're failing as parents from the get-go. We're bringing a child into this world and we aren't even able to be there for her like we should be able to, and it's just it's heartbreaking.
But it's unclear what visits will be like once Tom goes back to the U.S. for his job. He works every other week but doesn't have any more vacation time left, making quarantine a challenge. The couple wants the government to reconsider the requirement for immediate family. They're one of thousands of cross-border couples calling on the federal government to ease international travel restrictions. For unmarried couples, reunification is even more difficult. The co-founder of Advocacy for Family Reunification at the Canadian border says they're trying to expand the definition of immediate family to include adult children and common laws who have difficulty providing proof of living together. They want to make it clear that they're not asking for open borders, but just want to be together with their loved ones. But one Windsor father does want to see borders open with mandatory testing. He wants to be able to drive to his son who lives in Chicago for school. He hasn't seen him for 8 months.
I feel lockdown, I feel sad, and I can't basically do anything. This is just waiting period. This would be like in prison. But in prison, you don't have to worry for anything. Over here, I had to worry.
He says he can't afford to take 2 weeks off work to visit and doesn't feel comfortable flying. The Canada Border Services Agency says the current travel restrictions are in place to protect residents of Canada. Tamina Aziz, CBC News, Windsor.
School boards have learned yesterday that they're allowed to tap into reserve money to bring in more space and staff to space out students to ensure physical distancing. But will this be enough for a safe return? We dig into the finer details of the province's plan. Farah Morelli has more.
So we've heard the message from the province.
Our plan is the best plan in the entire country.
No province has invested more in the safety of our students than ours.
And we have the best plan.
Ontario's back-to-school plan is the best and safest in the country. So how true is that? Let's dig into the issues at stake. Physical distancing is the big one. Yesterday, the province said it's, quote, unlocking school boards' reserve funds so they can make sure students are physically distanced. How realistic is that?
The money that they're talking about, if it does in fact exist, is not going to cover the costs of appropriately distancing children.
The vice chair of the Durham board says boards aren't getting new money and its reserve funds are already tapped.
What is really extraordinary to me, though, is not only is it a limited amount of funds, right? Reserve funds are limited, but beyond that, we have no idea at this stage if it is even adequate to meet what we have imposed.
Once it has the money, another challenge: finding new spaces to put students. That depends on two things: how many extra spaces they already have and how many kids are planning to come back.
But in some schools where we're already at or above capacity, we'll need some extra space. And that's what we're already starting those conversations with the City of Toronto, admittedly with a little over 3 weeks to go before the first day of school. It's going to be tight.
Spacing kids out means, well, more staff are needed.
How quickly can you bring on more staff with, again, just 3 weeks to go until the start of school?
So for the TDSB, one of the options that we're looking at is reassigning teachers that are not in the classroom regularly, such as maybe librarians, coaches, guidance counselors.
It is a monumental task. 3 weeks seems far, far too short of a period to get it done, but I'm confident that if a board can get it done, this one will.
So what are the experts saying? Yesterday, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health gave the back-to-school plan his medical seal of approval.
If there was that concern now, I would not recommend opening at this stage, but I am recommending opening.
But not every medical professional is on board.
You know, just to say, well, it's approved by the Chief Medical Officer of Health. I don't know if the Chief Medical Officer of Health has read read the literature.
This pediatrician says she believes the government should hit the pause button.
I think that we don't need to necessarily rush into it. If it takes another week, if it takes a week where the teachers go back and look at the place, see where the problems are, see where you can't open up the windows, where it's poor circulation, look at alternative places, and then get the kids to come in a week later.
Minister Lecce said today he's open to the idea of allowing schools to stagger their opening to make sure everything is in place. But staggering is just for the first week of school. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Both English boards in Windsor, Essex have spent the day in meetings trying to figure out what this latest change is going to mean for students. The public board says that accessing reserve funds will help, but it might run their rainy day fund dry.
You have to be able to pay for a roof if something happens. You have to be able to have extenuating circumstances funds. And so that makes it just more difficult. We've worked very hard as a board to get in a good position. So, I understand the logic in it, but it does really take money from us.
And late this afternoon, the public board updated the back-to-school plan with an outbreak protocol. Here are some of the details. Anyone showing symptoms will be taken to an isolation room at the school, then sent home if the health unit says that a COVID-19 test is needed. Now, if that person tests positive, the health unit essentially takes over. They'll do contact tracing for potential exposures up to 14 days before symptoms. Now, if any school has 10% of the population calling in sick, principals will let the health unit know. And then once again, it's up to the health unit to decide what to do next. Now, deadline day for back to school decisions, that's been extended by the board. The parents will have until next Friday to confirm what their kids will be doing at the public board, whether it's heading back to school or remote learning. And the Catholic board, they also want to know by next Friday what students will be doing. That's for both the English boards. They wanted to have their back to school plan posted today, but that's been pushed back because of the latest changes. The Catholic board will have its plan out by Wednesday, they say, at the latest, which would give parents just 2 days to review what exactly the school year may look like. Now, the board is looking at the airflow in schools and the possibility of specific classroom solutions.
Filter practice used to be about a quarterly, change filters on a quarterly basis. We're going to be changing filters on a monthly basis now as we move forward. We're looking at this point in time with that additional funding that we'll have access to ductless mini splits as well as HRV, heating, recovery, and ventilation units, probably about $10,000 per classroom. And we're going to look at utilizing those in some of our classrooms as we can.
And earlier today, the health unit, they sent out some recommendations for parents to remember, noting that school, it's good for children when it comes to learning, but also the socialization factor. They say that COVID-19 positive kids mostly recover without medical help, but add that there are a small number of cases where they experience a severe illness, but it's not known exactly what triggers that. They suggest talking to a doctor to find out if your child is a higher risk. But they also say that for most children, the risks are outweighed by the benefits. That said, the health unit made it clear today that there is no risk-free option and that any gathering of people presents a risk of spreading COVID-19. The candidates for the Ward 7 by-election are excited to get into campaign mode now that a new date has been set for October. The seat's been empty since October of last year when former Councillor Eric Kuzmarchuk was elected to Parliament. Stacey Janzer spoke with some of the 12 candidates on how they plan to get their message out during a pandemic.
I feel relieved because this is something that we have been waiting for.
A little bit of relief to know that it will happen one way or the other.
Candidates are glad to see the end date in sight. For some in Ward 7, the pandemic has meant a shift in their priorities.
I've always been kind of concerned about the homelessness situation, and that's already been sort of in my previous plan. But even now, I think the pandemic really showed that we do need stronger social structures in place.
We need somebody at the table who knows how to balance the issues important to residents, balance important municipal things like our hospital, and to ensure that good financial decisions are made that respect the use of our tax dollars.
But candidates will have to find a different way to get their message out. Windsor is in stage 3, so physical distancing is still recommended out in public.
I will continue with my social media campaigning, but soon, whenever it will be permitted, I am planning to go with this hanger. I don't need to talk to people. I will be putting them on. Look, I have prepared all the materials. I have gloves. I have all this. I have this hanger. And everybody who would be campaigning for me will be wearing these T-shirts.
I'm trying to get my social media up and running, have everything done. I already put up some signs for people that I know. And I would like to knock on doors, I'm still hesitant.
Candidates have been patiently waiting for the election to resume. By-election rules and regulations mean the city has to pick up where the election left off earlier this year. So that means the city is not opening up nominations for any new candidates. The city adds it had to rule out mail-in votes because of cost and the time it would take to change bylaws. The date for the by-election is officially October 5th, but if you want to vote, you'll have to do it in person here at the WFCU Center. Now, the city says there will be special pandemic protocols in place, and early voting will be available between September 29th and October 3rd. Stacey Janzer, CBC News, Windsor.
Now, there are 9 more candidates who are running for the Ward 7 seat. Here's a look at some of the other names that you'll be able to find on your ballot. Again, this is the seat left vacant by former councillor Eric Kuzmaricek. And earlier this year, we did send out a questionnaire to all of the candidates. Back on March 13th was the deadline for filing, and that's when we asked them to give us their responses. And those are all posted on our website with the answers that they gave. That's at cbc.ca/Windsor. Now, you've heard a lot about COVID-19 outbreaks at farms where many migrant workers and members of the Low German community work. The secluded Mennonite population was hit particularly hard. I took a look at how the challenges they faced during the pandemic go beyond COVID.
Beroerde van Oxford County, Elgin County en St. Thomas maken bekend dat allemaal met een loer afzaten.
In these times, reaching out is more important than ever.
The Southwestern Public Health heeft ons nu weten
This radio station, an essential service, has new obstacles. They're broadcasting public health messages in Low German.
There are certainly some words that are difficult to translate, and so you have to do the concept, right?
The Low German community has deep roots in southwestern Ontario. Large families, the norm. Some Low Germans are Mennonites by ethnicity or by faith, or not at all. A diverse community in the thousands, dealing with a recent surge in COVID-19 cases.
Up until a couple of weeks ago, very few of us knew anybody that had it or had any experience with it, right? And I think now everybody knows somebody that has had it.
In early July, a warning. Dozens of people may have been exposed to COVID following a funeral service at this church. A high priority alert from public health hit the airwaves. A familiar voice trying to reach a self-sufficient community steeped in oral tradition and some who may be hesitant to seek healthcare services.
Being a first-generation Canadian,
Helen Bergen is a Low German Mennonite and a nurse practitioner.
This is a community that is very close-knit. Traditionally, there has been maybe some level of distrust from, government institutions.
As the rest of Ontario reopened, Windsor-Essex remained a hotspot. Hundreds of migrant workers testing positive during outbreaks at farms where Low German families also work. Leamington's hospital noticed more Low Germans hospitalized for COVID. At the same time, local leaders and mentors like Bergen focused on a grassroots response, asking pastors to preach public health messages during a pandemic.
Have it come from the leaders. So traditionally, we know that has worked well with this community, and we thought it was definitely worth an effort to give that a try.
While outreach was ongoing, the community was named by local health authorities.
We want to make sure that the community, the low-speaking German community, understand some of the severity of what we are seeing locally.
No numbers released, but defined as a surge. Bergen questions the decision. Cultural practices like large church services were altered or had been put on pause. To Low Germans told to physically distance like everyone else, this message missed the mark.
There's been some that their response is just, well, we're just going to withdraw from the community even further.
Some pointed fingers, called Bible thumpers, singled out online. Community members felt like they had a target on their backs.
They are good people, and for this to happen to them bothers me deeply.
Leamington's mayor took calls from mothers who were told that playdates were over.
Little Mary won't be able to play with your daughter because you're Low German, and we know that you have your potential to be a carrier of the virus.
Currently, community cases are declining. The region has reopened, standing in front of one of the many companies owned by Low German Mennonites on a hot summer's day. Bergen highlights the cold reality of COVID-19.
The virus hasn't changed how it is behaving and working and how it spreads through the community. So the only way that we can control the outbreaks and the number of cases that we see is by controlling our human behavior.
A reminder that the virus itself does not discriminate. In other news, about 50 horses from the Leamington Raceway stables are in isolation after coming in contact with a horse diagnosed with a highly contagious and serious disease. Now, the 3-year-old standardbred filly was housed in the stables at Leamington Raceway from August 1st to the 6th. It had been infected with strangles, an illness that causes fever and nasal discharge. Officials say it likely got sick after being in the same trailer as another horse in the greater Hamilton area. Horses from 3 barns were placed in isolation, according to the province's Alcohol and Gaming Commission, which says it first learned of the case 2 days ago. Officials say the isolation measures will result in horses missing from Sunday's races. What you're looking at right now, this is the start of the Olette Car Cruise, the 5th annual one. This one a little different. Drivers gathering alongside the Riverside Drive area rather than Festival Plaza like in years past. Now, given that it's a pandemic, the car love remains in this city, clearly dedicated to this tradition. And when we come back, Nick Sirkovich will tell us if we've got anything fun in store for the weekend when it comes weather-wise. Beachgoers in China's far northeast were treated to some magnificent artistry around 4 in the afternoon one day this week. They found it up in the sky. It's called an Arcus cloud, a low horizontal cloud that typically forms at the leading edge or gusty front of a thunderstorm. It looks absolutely incredible. In roll cloud formation, they do not connect to the ground and they aren't considered dangerous, but they certainly are beautiful. We bring in Nick Sirkovich now, just as we look at that. One of those awe-inspiring moments there, just where you kind of see it. I don't know how to believe that it's not dangerous. I believe it, but when you look up at something like that, you just get like the jitterbugs inside of you.
Yeah, you know what, sometimes we'll see these things, they look like, they call them shelf clouds as well in advance of a thunderstorm, and those ones are kind of signaling nasty weather that's headed our way. They look very similar, I guess. I can't tell the context of the picture there and what the rest of the weather picture was, but often what will happen is out of thunderstorms, you'll get the same sort of a picture where the cold air kind of runs down and it shoots out along the gust front and it forms that cloud. And as that cloud moves over, it gets gusty and you feel kind of the cold air coming through. Anyway, very cool picture. Very cool to see. We're not seeing that right now. However, on that note of thunderstorms, we did actually see a few showers and thunderstorms popping up across the region that I'm going to show you on the radar here. That being fueled by the heat and humidity, 27 degrees right now, 32 with the humidex. There's what I'm talking about. Now, we saw them closer up toward the Sarnia region. Still the risk tonight for seeing a shower. It's just kind of sitting here. That'll dissipate though as the sun starts to set, but tomorrow and in the weekend we've got a little bit more in the way of unsettled weather. We're under the influence of high pressure, but as that weakens and pushes out, we're watching this system up here, and that's going to be our next weather maker. So putting the forecast board into motion, this is what it looks like. Into tomorrow, same story. There is the chance we're going to see some pop-up showers through the afternoon. So I've got a slight chance, about a 30% chance of seeing showers in the Windsor area. What we're talking about is scattered showers. Now, the more organized rain is going to move through Sunday morning into the afternoon, and that's along the system that's going to bring a bit of a shift in our weather pattern. By Sunday evening, it clears out, and Monday, again, the chance for a few spotty scattered showers. Temperatures tonight down to 19, 20 degrees across the region. For tomorrow, highs again to about 29 degrees, humidex in the mid-30s, and the slight chance we're going to see a few showers. As we move through the next few days, temperatures fall a little bit into next week, but it's the weekend, of course. That's going to remain unsettled. Not a lot of rain, okay? Not a lot of rain, but on and off showers.
But on and off. That's okay. That's okay. Thanks for this, Nick.
All right, you bet.
Now, coming up next, a lot of talk about mail voting in the United States and whether those ballots are going to make it in time. We have an update on what Donald Trump has said most recently next. The U.S. Postal Service is expecting many Americans to opt for a vote-by-mail option. Donald Trump has been deriding the idea even while he and the First Lady requested for their own mail-in ballots. Stephen D'Souza reports.
On Fox Business yesterday, President Donald Trump just came out and said it. He doesn't want to give the United States Postal Service additional funding to handle mail-in ballots.
If we don't make a deal, that means they don't get the money. That means they can't have universal mail-in voting.
In the midst of a pandemic, when large crowds standing in line for hours at a polling station could potentially heighten the risk of catching the virus, Americans are increasingly looking to vote by mail in November's election. But the president has been attacking the process and the post office itself.
He's been afraid for a while. He knows that on the legit, it'd be hard for him to win. So he wants to put obstacles of participation.
The post office funding is part of a larger coronavirus stimulus package Congress can't agree upon. Today, Trump said if Democrats caved to Republican demands, he'd agree to fund the post office.
Yeah, I would certainly do that, sure. I would do that.
There has never been widespread election fraud with mail-in ballots, which have been used since the American Civil War. Trump, however, claims, without evidence, that a foreign power like China or Iran could influence the vote.
It's very hard to commit massive fraud. There is concern, however, of dysfunction in the mail balloting system.
Experts say there could be delays in receiving ballots and missed deadlines, something the post office is already warning states about. And that while November 3rd may be Election Day, it may not be Results Day.
You can be sure that tens of millions of ballots will not be counted on November 3rd. I mean, that's simply the nature of a mail election. This is why election administrators have what they call the election administrator's prayer, which is, oh God, whatever happens, please don't let it be close.
And even with all the accusations that he's manipulating the post office for political gain, Trump himself filed for an absentee ballot so he could possibly vote by mail in Florida. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
6:29 p.m. and that's it for us here at CBC Windsor. We leave you with one last look at the Detroit River as we end the week. Thanks for watching, and make sure you and your family stay safe this weekend.